Ah,
Okay,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
start.
Okay, so now let's start a webinar today. So hello, thank you very much for your participation in our webinar today. My name is Satoshi Takayama. I am one of the co-founders of our company, Fenetre Partners, and I'm also an advisor for the industrial machinery and component sector in the Japanese market. And here is another co-founder and the managing director, Yasushi Hasegawa. After I introduce our company, he will do the main part of today's presentation. And the topic of the webinar today is how to develop Japanese customers. And you are, and okay, maybe yes, Hasegawa-san next, maybe you can move to the next page. Yes. And as you can see, your goal is not developing the Japanese domestic market, but Japanese customers located all over the world. But before we start our webinar, we'd like to let you know just one thing. At the bottom of this Zoom screen, you can find Q&A panel, question and answer panel. And during our presentation, if you have any questions about our presentation or Japanese business in general, please use this Q&A panel to ask your question. Then we will answer to your questions during the presentation or at the last part of the presentation. Also, if you have questions about specific industry or about your company's business in Japan, please contact us by email to reserve a separate online meeting with us. You can find Yasushi's email address in the invitation email of this webinar. It is hasegawa at fenetre.co.jp. I'll type his email address later in the chat box. And we are happy to answer to your questions and support your future business in the Japanese market, in the Japan. And also after the webinar, if you'd like to have a presentation material of today, please send an email message to Yasushi, then he'll send it to you later. And now you see this page shows today's agenda. Yasushi will explain why Japan, understand your customers first, reality of marketing and sales activities in Japan, options of market entry modes, case study, and question and answer. Okay, Hasegawa-san, please go to the next page. Would you? Okay, thank you. And with this page, I'd like to introduce our company briefly. Our company, Fenetre Partners, is one of the leading consulting firm of trade, investment, and international marketing based in Tokyo. Our clients are medium to large size of companies, mainly from the US and Europe. We also have many clients of overseas governmental organizations to support their trade missions and foreign direct investment. The main scope of our service is market entry support for to enter into Japan, but not only by market researches, but or consulting, but by implementation. And this implementation means, for example, business development and lead generation. And this is our company's strength. What we mainly do with this implementation is sales and marketing activities locally in Japan on behalf of our clients. So we work as if we are your local Japanese branch office. We currently have 32 staff and we have worked on more than 500 international projects since our company was established 18 years ago. And this page shows logos of our past and current clients. As I explained earlier, we have clients of mainly from Europe and also we have customers of American manufacturing companies. We also have governmental organization clients. Industries of our clients are mainly industrial machinery, components, automotive, and other industries. And we also have customers of consumer products, manufacturing companies. And from next page, my colleague Yasushi will explain the main topic of today's presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Takayama-san, for your introduction.
Mm.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yasushi Hasegawa, another co-founder and managing director of Fenetre Partners. And thank you very much for joining our webinar today. We have 100 registrants, and now we have over 40 participants. I'm very happy to see this figure, and also I think many of you guys are interested in the Japanese market. Today, I'd like to give you some idea about how to develop Japanese customers, of course, in Japan and also outside Japan. And we've been working as a market entry consultant or a business development person working on behalf of our clients. And we've seen many success cases and also more failures. So I want to give you some insights how to be successful with Japanese customers. And I'd like to start with why Japan, the first session. So probably many of you guys are familiar with the overview of our economy. Uh, Actually, in the past, in 1980s, Japan was called economic animal. At the time, people thought Japan as number one in terms of economic development. But the situation has been changing in the last 3 decades. Let me explain some key figures which highlight how Japan is. So, population is still large. Mm. Uh, and GDP, you can find the figure 4.4 trillion. It's still large GDP as a single country, but last year, Germany has overtaken Japan. Hmm? Oh, you
Uh,
stopped the sharing
no.
window.
Oh, no, I didn't. Maybe you
Oh,
can,
oh, really? Let me.
okay, maybe
Okay,
you can try once again.
okay. Just a moment, please. Hmm.
Doesn't work?
Now I'm opening the file.
Okay, good. Sorry for the technical trouble.
So I haven't experienced this kind of error. Okay, let me share my screen. Hmm. Can you see the screen?
Not yet, but um,
Maybe
maybe soon, I hope.
the connection has been worse, I guess. I'll
Oh.
change you. Mhm. Wi-Fi.
Hmm. Sorry for the trouble once again. Now,
Can you see the screen?
uh,
Not yet.
not yet.
Mm.
In that case, I can share my screen. Hmm.
I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. Let me try this again.
Hmm.
Oh, can you see the presentation?
Not yet. Now. Yes, now I can see
Okay,
the
great.
presentation. Yeah, good.
Okay. Uh, Again, I think I explained that GDP has been overtaken by Germany last year. And you can find the GDP growth rate here, which looks very high, but it's made by the inflation mainly. And now I'm going to explain the two shocking figures for you. The first one is the GDP per capita. Actually, in 2002, Japan was ranked world number two, next to Luxembourg. But now it's ranked number 38th. So I have to say, Japan is not a rich country any longer. And the median age, the second oldest country in the world, next to Luxembourg again. So this is a reality. Our country is getting poorer and older. So yeah, that's why I usually say I don't recommend Japan to consumer products providers in general because of this kind of economy and also demographic. So you can find the chart of nominal GDP of Japan. Uh, in early 1990, we experienced a burst of a bubble economy. So our economic growth hit the ceiling and then almost flat. And in 2008, there was an economic crisis globally, and in 2011, a big earthquake. After COVID, you can see the growth, but actually it's made by the inflation. So I have to say our economy is somewhat stable, but you can't expect a rapid growth in our economy. And this is a chart of nominal GDP. Uh, no, sorry, nominal GDP in the US dollar. So you can see in the last few years, our GDP is declining in terms of US dollar. And actually, in 2012 and 13, Japan recorded a very high GDP in US dollar. At the time, one US dollar was less than 80 yen, but now it's 160. So the value of yen has been almost half. So if you've been to Japan in the past few years, probably you found a very reasonable or affordable price of things in Japan. So I sometimes say now Japan is on sale. So, but this could be a potential problem for you in the case you export from US or Europe. Um, and then, oh, sorry. And this is a demographic of Japan. Actually, our population started declining in 2009 or 10. So our population is getting older and older, and nowadays we are losing almost 1 million people every year. Imagine the effect on our economy. We are losing the number of consumers and workforce at the same time. Of course, it's not good for our economy. And however, I can say Japan is still very attractive market for some types of businesses. And I think this is a good example to explain the situation. This chart shows the number of cards sold annually. In early 90s, almost 8 million cards were sold inside Japan. But now it's over just 4 million. So it's a huge drop in the past 3 decades. So, but then I have a question. Do you think Japanese automotive companies are doing well? So, actually, this is a secret why Japan is still an attractive market. So, this is a chart to show the number of production and number of cars sold inside Japan and outside Japan. So you can see the domestic sales and export. So, and this is domestic production. So you can see half of cars manufactured in Japan are exported. So this is the reason why still big Japanese manufacturers are doing well. They are growing by exports. At the same time, please see the figure of overseas production. Not only automotive, but any kinds of big manufacturers are spreading out all over the world, setting up factories. So that's why this is the figure of global production. Uh, Big Japanese companies are growing by global expansion and exports. This figure is somewhat old in 2019, but after uh, this period, COVID hit the global economy. It's declined dramatically, but now it's recovering. So I think the total production has been back to 24 million last year. So now they are recovering steadily. So again, the domestic market of Japan is not doing well, not a good market. But as far as you are selling it to big Japanese manufacturers, you can capture this kind of growth by global expansion and exports. And this is our overseas sales ratio. Obviously, in the past 2 decades, uh, it's been increasing. So famous big manufacturers have very high overseas sales ratio, like Yamaha Motor. They are selling 90% of products outside Japan. You can see Nissan 85%, Brother 83%. So many Japanese companies don't rely on the domestic market any longer. So when you talk about business development with Japanese customers, you don't need to see the figure of the domestic market of Japan because uh, your largest part of your business opportunity exists outside Japan. So I can show you the very interesting research conducted by AHRCA Japan, well, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Germany, its Japan office. They distributed the questionnaires to ask which is bigger, A or B. You can see here, B is sales revenue from their Japan subsidiary, which means sales inside Japan. And A means uh, sales from Japanese customers outside Japan. And actually, half of their membership, uh, Japan subsidiary of Japanese company, German companies answered A is greater than B. So they are doing business development in Japan, but they are more from outside Japan. And surprisingly, 20% answered A is 4 times bigger than B. So this is the reason why many industrial suppliers are still interested in the Japanese market, even though the economic situation of Japan is not good. Now, some of you guys think you should sell directly to Japanese companies outside Japan. But as far as I know, decision makers are usually in Japan, in their headquarters or uh, around the center. If you are selling commodity or small things, probably local engineers can make a decision to choose your product. However, if you are selling some crucial components, software or equipment, decision makers are usually in Japan. For example, if you are in the automotive sector, autonomous driving software or some sensor for safety or environmental related something, usually the kind of decision is made in Japan. So that's why you should do business development in Japan, and then you will have a chance to deliver to their subsidiaries outside Japan. And then this is the additional value when you do business development in Japan. Uh, these guys are investors. These guys are market. So Japan is the biggest investor in many countries, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Malaysia, which means when you do business development in other Asian countries, you often encounter Japanese companies. However, decision makers are in Japan. So I usually recommend you should combine the business development in Japan and also in other Asian markets. So it makes sense to get more sales revenue from your target Japanese customers. The extreme case is Thailand. Actually, two-thirds of automotive companies in Thailand are Japanese brands. So if you are doing something in Thailand, you have to do something also in Japan. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So this is the conclusion of the first section. Uh, our domestic market is not good. And if you are selling consumer products, I don't recommend Japan, especially nowadays at the current exchange rate. Made in US or Europe products are too expensive. Probably Japanese consumers can't afford. Of course, there are some limited number of rich people here, of course, but it's very small portion. But I recommend Japan to industrial suppliers. Like if you are selling uh, some components, device, material, software with unique technologies to advanced engineering sectors like automotive, robotics, semiconductor, Japan is still very attractive market. And also you can find opportunities in healthcare sector and alternative energy sectors because of the some problem in Japan. So now you understand Japan is an attractive market for you or not. It depends on the type of products that you are selling. In the second session, I'd like to explain how the Japanese customers are, their organization and the decision-making system, or those things. Actually, it's very different from North America and Europe. So let's start from the business career of Japanese business people. Have you ever had the term lifetime employment and seniority-based pay? It's very unique. Usually, we Japanese enter a company as a new graduate at the age of 22 or 23rd, I guess. Uh, the way of recruiting of a Japanese company is like a military service. Usually, people start working as of April 1st. So a few hundred new graduates enter the company at the same time together. So, and they have some training for 1 month or 2 months, which is like a boot camp of US Marine. So they enter the farm and their salary will increase like this. And usually down and at the age of 65, they are automatically released. And some are promoted to a very high level. So this is a typical HR system of a big Japanese company. So your performance doesn't matter. So your salary is determined how many years you've been working for the same employer. So it's a very unique system, and you have to be over 40 years old to be promoted to a manager, and 50 years old to be a senior manager. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but this is Japan. So which means taking a risk doesn't give them any fruits. So that's why people are very conservative. They like to keep their position because taking a risk doesn't give them the chance to be promoted. So you need to understand such background, why Japanese customers are very conservative. Sometimes doing nothing is the best strategy to keep their position in their organization. And this is our organizational structure. So people usually ask me, which is our typical decision-making system in Japan, top-down or bottom-up? But the reality is middle up and down. It sounds really complex because our uh, decision-making system here is a sort of consensus base. So middle managers are busy. They need to get an approval from their high-level people. At the same time, they like to make consensus in their team and with another department or something. So it takes a lot of time to make a decision, especially in the case they replace the core component or equipment with a new one. And they need to have a lot of, discussions internally. And sometimes our clients ask me to arrange meetings with a high level of their target companies, but it's meaningless. High level people are not interested in component or equipment. You know, it's meaningless. So usually we recommend you meet with middle managers who are actually working on product selection. And if they think your product is good, they will try to get the approval from a higher level. And let me explain the background of this kind of culture. I think some of you guys are familiar with this kind of framework to compare different culture. Uh, yeah, that was developed by Hosted. I think this is our, uh, I forgot the name of the something cultural dimension. So, and there are five dimensions, but let me focus on three high score of Japan. The first one is uncertainty avoidance. So Japan is the most risk-averse country. And US, fear, you guys are risk taker. And this figure shows how Japanese people are long-term oriented. Actually, Germany has very similar score. So in such countries, people don't change supplier very often. But in the US or India, China, every year they switch supplier. It's easy to replace. But at the same time, you can be replaced easily. So, and another high score is masculinity. Japan is super masculine society. Uh, People don't hesitate to work until late night, as I'm doing, and people usually sacrifice their personal life for achieving some goal or objectives set by their employer. Very masculine. So those fears work usually in a negative way. First, uh, they are risk averse. That's why they don't want to change their existing parts, components, as far as they are working properly. And they prefer to keep working together with the same supplier for decades. And your local competitors are working very hard, and they don't say no to their customers. Those are the reasonable high market entry barrier of Japan. And maybe this kind of culture was developed by samurai culture. I think you guys know this term, harakiri. So in the past, we had to commit a suicide when we made a mistake. So this is the reason why we are very risk averse, and also, our culture is super masculine. And this is abolished just 150 years ago. So still, we have this kind of mentality. That's why people are very cautious and conservative. They really uh, fear, they have a strong fear of failure. So now you've understood that your customers how Japanese business people behave and how they react uh, to your offer when you try to replace existing suppliers. And now I'm going to explain there some tips of how to do successful business development activities in Japan. The first aspect is the language. I think I don't need to explain this in detail, but uh, it's rare. If you are lucky, you encounter an English-speaking guy. However, if you are selling technical products, your counter people, engineers, don't like speaking English, especially for complicated technical discussion. So that's why you need to translate everything, and also you need to hire a local person who speaks Japanese. Otherwise, it's very difficult to convince your Japanese customer. Next, it's about the sales process. Uh, you can compare two type of companies. I don't say where it is, but the open and flexible country. I heard it's easy to arrange first round meeting with a customer. Okay, come on, come on. So uh, it's easy to have an open discussion, but sometimes they forget about their appointment. But don't worry, you can make another appointment. And this kind of technical discussion is short, and sometimes you can easily reach an agreement if your price is clearly lower than the existing ones, or if your products look very advanced. So you can reach an agreement. But however, in this kind of country, there are a lot of changes, even though after you sign on an agreement. So easy to make an agreement, but difficult to implement. But in Japan, it's opposite. Uh, it's really time and energy consuming to identify a right person, especially in the big organization. People don't disclose contact information. So you need to try to ask someone to introduce yourself to a right person again and again and again, especially in the big organization. Uh, like your automotive Toyota, Honda, they have tens of thousands of engineers. So it's really tough to identify a particular person who is responsible for your field. And usually, having a first meeting, they ask a lot of questions. Of course, I always say there's no obligation. You can meet our client and you can ask questions directly, but they'll say, I need to get an approval from my boss. That's why I need to make clear those things. And they ask a lot of questions. So this is very different for before having a first meeting with your potential customer. And then you will have a lot of meetings, and also they have to work hard internally for making a consensus. It takes a lot of time to reach an agreement. However, after making an agreement, everything moves forward smoothly. It's a difference between open, flexible country and Japan. So when you have a sales communication with a Japanese company, you have to be very patient and the communication style. So Japanese business people are very indirect and they are not good at discussion. They often say, okay, let me bring it back to my organization and I will talk to my colleagues, managers. So they usually can't make a decision on the spot. And they ask everything in documents. Actually, verbal communication is not valid in Japan. Please put such information in the document and send it to me. So this is a typical response from a Japanese business people. And sugarcoating to foreigners or mitigation. So usually, we are very conservative and risk averse, and people value harmony or friendship, and that's why they like to avoid arguments, especially in English. So if they feel uncomfortable, they don't show it. They just smile and they say thank you to you, but they never come back again to you. So This is a very, crucial cultural difference between Japan and North America or Europe. And yeah, this is a comparison between low context culture and high context culture. The context means there are some messages behind why you speak. So I think Switzerland is here. Uh, some people say Swiss is an extreme German. So you guys are, you know, super logical, radical. You like to make things very clear. However, in Japan, uh, people prefer to put everything in a vague way. So it's very difficult for you to understand what they think, but they can easily understand why you think. So uh, this is another problem of communication with a Japanese business person. And the customer relationship is also very different. In Japan, there's a proverb, a customer is God. So suppliers don't dare. Uh, then sometimes big manufacturers establish an exclusive supply chain called Keiretsu. So, for example, Toyota has its own supply chain network. Toyota Tsusho is a group distributor, and Toyota Group Tier 1, Tier 2, and Honda also has its own supply chain network. Nissan and the Tier 1 company in Honda Group can't sell to Toyota. It sounds strange, maybe. Actually, Honda and Nissan announced they expired their carriers several years ago, but still this kind of culture exists. So this is a very strange supply chain network here. And in the extreme case, Toyota send people to their tier one supplier or tier two supplier, even though there are no financial relationship. Uh, this is a very hierarchical. So it's like a pyramid ruled by a big manufacturer. I think in Europe or North America, the partnership between the manufacturer and the supplier is basically equal. Of course, it depends on the power balance. If you are selling very unique products, probably you have more power. But basically, relationship is determined by the economic aspects. But in Japan, automatically it's regulated. And the quality requirements is another obstacle when you try to develop Japanese customers. Again, we still have some mentality of a harakiri, committing a suicide. So that's why people try to avoid any failures, and they tend to be a perfectionist. So this is a good example. This is a specification from a Chinese company sorry, from European companies to our factory in China. This is a case of outsourcing of manufacturing. European supplier said, hey, please make this uh, tool in your factory in China. Okay, this is a very simple specification. But this is a specification provided from a Japanese company. Please make this product. Actually, those are very similar, but the way of making specification is very different. So Japanese love micromanagement. Sometimes it's really tough, especially for German engineers, I think, because uh, usually it doesn't make sense. However, you have to accept this kind of cultural difference. If you reject, no, we don't need to such a specification, you have no chance to be successful with Japanese customers. So now you've understood the reality of sales activities in Japan, and you are now aware of some entry barriers. And now let's think about how to enter the market. So there recommended first action is finding a distributor. Probably it's the same everywhere in the world, but in this complicated market, sometimes finding a distributor wouldn't be a solution. Oh, and this is a typical framework to compare the different economic development stages. Uh, Actually, now Japan is a top runner of a mature market, too much mature. Actually, in 1960s, 70s, 80s, Japan was here, growing, and then early 90s, the growth hit the ceiling, and now here. So now India is still growing. China seems getting close to the ceiling of economic growth. So in the growing state, things are not fixed. Everything is dynamic. So many new companies enter the market very often and withdraw very often. But at the mature stage, things are somewhat fixed. It's called oligopoly. So the market is usually dominated by several strong players, and the market shares or distribution channel has been fixed. So this is a reality of Japan, and I think, or I heard, Germany is very similar. Not easy to enter for a new player. And let me explain some difference in distribution channel structure in new market and mature market. So in new market, the size of players is usually small, and they often enter and they often withdraw. Distributors same. Some start a new business and some went to bankrupt. It's changing, and the customers the same. Your target companies like American companies set up a new factory in this new market or expansion. So everything is changing. So there are a lot of risks. At the same time, there are a lot of opportunities because things are changing every year. However, a few decades later, the situation will be like this. The size of player has been bigger and bigger because smaller companies are acquired or sometimes they disappeared. So that's why small companies doing this in a traditional industry. If there's a small company, which means they failed to grow, so probably they are not a good partner for you. So suppliers are big, and the distributors are getting big, and the customers are big, and through a few decades of history, usually supply chains has been almost fixed, especially in Japan. People are long-term oriented, so they don't want to change as far as things are going well. And in addition to this, because of K-rates, as I said, there are sort of some culture of exclusive supply chain. For example, Mitsubishi supplier sells through Mitsubishi distributors to Mitsubishi end users. And probably they don't sell to Mitsui, I guess. So in some cases, you need to have several distributors for different end users. Things are fixed and sometimes divided into different distribution channels. So this world and this world is totally different. Sometimes some people say I'm very successful in other new Asian markets, so I'm confident with Japan. But I have to say, it doesn't make sense. Your success story in other Asian market usually doesn't work well in Japan because the market condition is totally different and business culture is also very different. So be careful. I've met such a person a lot of times, and everybody failed entering the Japanese market because they are stuck with their success stories in other markets. be flexible. So I have to say, uh, when you enter the Japanese market, learning ability is the key because everything is different. You have to study everything only for Japan. And this is a sort of case study. American filter producer, which want to sell to automotive, uh, had a meeting arranged by the embassy with a distributor. And they expect this distributor try to sell their products to end users, automotive OEMs. However, it turned out this distributor only has a business with a particular end user A. So the main function of distributor in the automotive industry is logistics. And they don't promote a particular brand because their role is not sales. Uh, you know, in any case, they purchase from your company, supplier A, supplier B. Uh, Probably profit or price are in the same range. So distributors say, whichever, as far as end user A is happy with that product. In this case, they have no reason to promote a particular supplier A or your product. So that's why in the automotive or construction machinery industry, you have to do business development directly with OEMs. And after having a technical discussion, your customer will ask you to arrange distribution. Please export your product to the factory of this distributor. And then this guy will arrange everything. So this kind of distribution channel structure exists in Japan. Sometimes it could be multi-layers. It's really complicated. So now I would like to explain the theory of marketing tree. Usually, most of companies prefer having a business through a local distributor and expect your products are sold semi-automatically by this distributor. I totally agree with you if it works well because it, it doesn't generate any risks. However, at the same time, no control on your side because your distributor works on their own interests. They don't work for you. So and there another extreme option, direct investment. You invest for setting up your legal entity in Japan and hire local talents. You can get a high control. However, risk is high. If you set up your own sales office with hiring a small team, probably you need to pay half a million every year, and sometimes it takes 3 to 4 years to get the first sales, especially in the automotive industry or big manufacturing sectors. So you need to, keep spending that kind of costs. It's a big risk. That's why I recommend you try to find some options in between. Of course, you can start trade from trade. At the same time, I have to say, uh, your business through a local distributor can easily hit the ceiling. So, but yeah, having a business through a local distributor could be a good start point, especially the guy has good existing customer base. It makes sense for you. However, sooner or later, your sales hit the ceiling usually because you can't make a good relationship with end users and difficult to have a deep technical discussion with end users. And usually, Japanese distributors don't disclose important information to you. And usually, one distributor can cover very narrow segment of the market and difficult to control sales activities and user pricing. Sometimes they mark up a lot and low service level, especially at the beginning of the market entry. And the worst thing is you never know why your business doesn't grow in Japan. So that's why, uh, of course, again, you can start with finding a distributor, but at the same time, you need to be prepared. to this situation. So finally, I recommend you combine some options to control the growth of your business in Japan. Now, let me explain some case studies. Uh, so actually, many of our clients are industrial suppliers. So for such a case, uh, usually normal market research doesn't work well, especially in the case your products must be customized. So only one possible way is an interactive way to have a technical discussion between your engineer and your customer's engineer. Otherwise, it's difficult to judge the marketability. So at least you need to receive RFQ 10, 20, and analyze the RFQs and also the analyze the response on your proposal. So that kind of test marketing is recommended to understand the market at the same time marketability and also for establishing your competitive strategy against very strong local players. And this is a case of the kind of test marketing together with our firm. The first one is, I think, German component supplier for plant. And those are what we did. Probably those are typical activities when we open your sales office in some countries. It's same. Uh, Only one difference is the outsourcing base because they hire our firm as their sales rep, working on retainer base. And we had the product training and translation, and we do research to identify potential customers and visited them for technical discussion. And we found there some challenges. Uh, Voltages of electricity of Japan is very different from their standard products. And they estimated the cost of improvement of their production line. It requires over 1 million. So it doesn't make sense to invest before developing many customers in Japan. And also, this is a bad news. Strongest competitor has advantages in both quality and price. So it sounds not promising at all. But our staff had a technical discussion with many potential customers, and we realized there's some strong uh, segment where this company can compete. So this company is outside Japan, our client, and in Japan side, Japanese customers. So